I'm glad to be back with you again. Wanted to share with you, we're in the season of Easter resurrection. And someone asked me, what was my favorite Psalms? Well, I have quite a few, but so appropriately for this is Psalm 68. And you could read it at home in different translations. But beginning, I love that verse 2 is, God arises, his enemies are scattered, and those who hate him flee before him. As smoke is driven away, so are they driven. As wax melts before the fire, so the wicked perish before God. But the just rejoice and exult before God. They're glad and they rejoice. You know, the beautiful analogy, enemies are scattered. God arises. He rises out of the tomb. And those who hate him flee before him. I think that's a lesson. Not everybody loves Jesus. They ridicule, they joke. I saw the Washington Post talk about some preacher in Virginia who said that we're not afraid of the virus, and he passed away. He contracted the virus and died. So with jeering, well, look at him. He trusted God and he died of the virus. But people do hate him, and we're seeing it more and more, and they're not quiet about it. You know, they hate him, they hate the church, they hate Christians. But here it says, those who hate him flee before him. As smoke is driven away, so are they driven. And the analogy, as wax melts before the fire. If you ever had that expression, and that experience, taking a candle and stick it near a fire, it just drips, drip, drips, okay? And so all those who hate him will flee. The wicked will perish before God. But the just rejoice and exult before God. They're glad and rejoice. Realize it's the season of Easter, and appropriately say Christ is risen, indeed he's risen. And behind me is the tomb of Christ. We create the tomb, and on Great Friday, after the Passion reading, we process with his body in a shroud, always carried by people in the parish. We go around the church 3 times, of course, Trinitarian. And after veneration, which this year we're unable to have it, people come up and venerate the figure of Christ. Slowly we bring him and we lay him in the tomb. This is the site of our baptismal font. And Jesus says, talk about baptism. If you're going to have eternal life, you have to be baptized. Paul says, if you have been baptized, you have died with Christ, you have risen with Christ. And so beautifully, the tomb, the flowers, this is the site of victory. This is the site. And the good news is that the tomb is empty. You could ask, well, where's Muhammad? Well, buried in Mecca. Where's this one? Where's this one? Where's that one? But where is Jesus? He's not buried in Jerusalem. He's gone. His tomb is in Jerusalem, yes, but it's empty. That's the good news. That's what it means to be a Christian. I think sometimes we get so bogged down with do's and don'ts, and are you a Christian? Or you belong to the church? Do you do this? And we have to believe in Christ, and we believe in Christ. This is our hope. And not only his hope, our hope, when we die, we'll automatically go to immediate judgment. And the church fathers tell us that. St. Ephrem says that we'll all come up short, and God will look at us. But Jesus, if he knows us, if he knows you, he will step forward and say, loving Father, put her on my tab, put him on my tab. And his victory is our victory. So this is the joyful. Even though at times we have pandemic, we're worried about this and that, the greater picture, and don't take your eyes off the greater picture. We may get distracted. We're worrying about viruses. We're worrying about everything else. God provides. He provides. If you're out of money, he'll provide for a job. He'll provide. And it's his, I always like saying, it's his show. Our reality on earth is his show. It's not someone else's. It's not a political party. And it's not the doctors, but it's God's show. And you pray and ask him for protection for you and your family, and you have it. But the message, here we see Christ resurrected out of the tomb. His crown of thorns had become something beautiful, flowers, the lance, the sponge. The tomb is no longer in black. And it says the daughter of Zion takes off her black, and she's no longer mourning. She's wearing white. And the church is wearing white, for Christ is risen. The flower is the life, full of joy. And this is an Easter message. We're not going to die. We can live forever. This shell, as Paul says, the tent, it's going to be struck down, but just a tent. This is with your body. This is not you. Your soul is you. And I hope on the last day we'll have a resurrection of the body. But we, all the saints, they're in heaven. And we go, hopefully, the Blessed Mother meet us. Jesus meets us, our patron saint. Then our brothers, sisters, mothers, fathers, they greet us to the party. And probably saying, what took you so long? And again, I want to read, God arises. His enemies are scattered. And those who hate him flee before him. As smoke is driven away, so are they driven. As wax melts before the fire, so the wicked perish before God, our God. But the just rejoice and exult before God. They are glad and rejoice. And I was thinking about on Good Friday, when we come to the tomb, it's chanted over and over again, and what they're singing, by your death and resurrection, Lord, you have trampled down death by death. He used death to destroy death and restored life to those in the tomb. God bless you. Tune in on Sunday at 10 o'clock. We're live streaming. We're looking at the feasibility. Perhaps we have a drive-in liturgy out on our 5 acres, so we'll see about that, and we'll keep you posted on that. Check our emails, and you can always go to our YouTube and see this again, pass it on, and look at others. God bless.